Hi, and welcome back to the Art Shrink. Today, I want to give you some context so that we have a shared understanding of the historic events that led us to where we are now, both as collaborative and individual artists. It's an important history lesson to help you understand why it is that you feel marginalized and disrespected, and why arts audiences and consumers are dwindling. Also, it will help you understand why moving around in your arts community has started to feel a lot like trudging through a desert. So here we go. There is an arts ecosystem, and you should know about it because that's the environment that you exist in. The ecosystem has two distinct sides. One side is artists and arts groups, and the other side is arts funders, grant makers, policy makers, and arts consumers. The arts ecosystem worked pretty well until 1990, when a significant event happened that would change everything. Even though this event occurred in the United States, it had a ripple effect on the United Kingdom and throughout Europe. And here it is. Until 1999, the National Endowment for the Arts made grants to individual artists. The NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, had funded individual artists since its inception in the 1960s. Thank you, Jacqueline Kennedy. Private foundations and smaller government grants arts programs throughout the United States also formally began supporting individual artists also. So there was a regular stream of grant opportunities available to individuals. Then, in 1990, there were 4 performance artist grantees whose projects the United States Congress deemed to be indecent. And as a result, their grants were revoked. By the way, these grant applications had already successfully gone through the NEA's peer panel review process. These artists became known as the NEA 4. But there's a happy note. The artists also filed suit against the NEA that went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they won. They ended up receiving the funding they had originally requested. Nevertheless, the National Endowment for the Arts subsequently shut down their individual artist grant program completely under threat by Congress of the organization being eliminated entirely. And following suit, foundations and public agencies in the United States and other parts of the world began eliminating their individual artist grant programs. This event is what became known as the culture wars. You can easily find out more information online if you're interested in digging deeper. And full disclosure, I worked as a contractor for the National Endowment for the Arts in their Challenge and Advancement program from 1995 to 1998. As a result of this catastrophic event, policymakers and funders began making decisions that have had and continue to have negative effects on the entire arts ecosystem. It began with a steady stream of conversations among grant and policymakers focusing on making grants with quantifiable outcomes, meaning artists and arts groups had to provide statistics like percentages of growth, percentages of earned and contributed revenue, increases in audience size, and so on. Funders thought that funding made based on these types of quantifiable outcomes would keep them, meaning funders and policymakers, out of the touchy-feely emotional world of the artist, and would protect them from being involved financially with any arts group that created things that just might insult the delicate sensibilities of the general public and, God forbid, politicians. The single most important topic of conversation for policymakers, grant makers, and funders was sustainability. And it became a clarion call. And wouldn't you know it, pretty soon artists and arts groups everywhere were also talking about sustainability. Arts groups began making strategic plans, marketing plans, financial plans, and pretty soon other types of organizations entered the arts ecosystem. and they were called arts service organizations. They existed and still exist today to train artists to be business people. These organizations were mostly not-for-profit groups, and they were also writing grant applications to get their own slice of the funding pie. And there's more. At the same time as funders and policymakers were talking about sustainability, they also began imagining ways that artists and arts groups could start earning their own money. They thought, why can't artists work as teachers and social workers? Artists could make music programs in schools and nursing homes, or they could create art therapy programs for prison inmates or in mental hospitals. And they thought not only could artists generate income, but encouraging artists to work in education and social services would protect the funders, particularly government grant makers, from political perils. And artists and arts groups raced to answer the call of duty. Artists willingly set aside their own artistic imperatives and creative impulses to build businesses and advance the goal of education and social services. And they continue to conform today, as evidenced by the exponential growth of arts service nonprofits and social service and educational arts programs, all of which are probably supported by government grants. Now, to be clear, I'm not blaming artists or arts groups here. Frankly, they have very little choice in the matter. They need to survive. They need to be business people and educational and social service providers just so they can carve out a little piece of the pie to do what they were born to do and knowingly surrender the rest of the money. The decision made decades ago continues to confuse and disempower artists today. I believe that over time they've led to dwindling arts audiences and consumers, and I have witnessed a disturbing decline in respect for artists in general. I know that artists feel as though they have no choice but to chase sustainability and create educational and social programs. It's because they cannot take the risk of speaking out against it. While I can speak out, I don't answer to arts authorities anymore, and I have a lot to say. I am here to tell the truth as I see it and offer alternatives. Please join me next time when I explore options that arts funders can consider in making their grants, how artists can reposition themselves in the arts ecosystem through language. You can find the transcript for this episode on the Art Shrink blog site. Please subscribe to this channel and encourage any funders, policymakers, philanthropists, and anyone who loves and supports you to do the same.